Hazael. Now, we don't know too much about around Damascus. I can show you some nice aerial photos of what probably was the location of the palace of Hazael. But really, Hazael is not known from the archaeological evidence in Syria, but rather he's well known from the Assyrian sources, from Aramaic inscriptions, from the extensive biblical descriptions of historical events relating to Hazael. And it's clear that in the second half of the 9th century, after he came to power, and in light of a long period of Assyrian, if you want to call it withdrawal from this region, he was the main player. He was the neighborhood bully. And he figured very, very centrally in the Levantine geopolitics. And we know very well of his campaigns, particularly from the biblical texts in the Kingdom of Israel and Transjordan. But there's a lot of other evidence that seem to indicate that he was active in other places. And here we have the ivory inlays mentioning his name, and the horse cheek guard from Samos, all indicating a very, very dominant personality. And of course, we have the Royal Aramaic inscription from Tel Dan, which most people, there are a couple of exceptions, attribute this to Hazael. And of course, the discussion of how does he relate to the rise of power of Yehu, etc. And I just want to suggest a little thing, which you'll excuse me if I'm being a little bold. How about that? Who knows? Now, you'll say I'm crazy, but since this is such a major event, and as I'll speak about this in a moment, had enormous political consequences throughout the southern Levant, it might very well be that this is mentioned in this stela as well. Now we want to try to put this within a chronological context. We know very well that Shalmaneser III, in addition to receiving tribute from Yehu, as we see in the Black Obelisk, the same year as Hazael came to power, he campaigned to Damascus. A few years later, that's his campaign to Damascus. A few years later, we know that he again campaigned to Damascus, but we know that the last campaigns of Hazael, of Shalmaneser III to southern Syria were two campaigns in 838 and 837. After that, all known activity are in the north. And thus, if we want to start attempting to place where the campaign in Philistia could be, I think we have several options. Notice that it has to be somewhere between, and I'm using here Rainey and Notley's chronology. Of course, you can take another one and move things a little forward or backwards. It doesn't really matter by just a few years. But it has to be somewhere from 841, where he came to power, to somewhere in the very late 9th or early 8th. And it's usually assumed that it has to be after the campaigns to Damascus. Now, for many years, the accepted... Oh, no, I don't want that one. The accepted interpretation was placing it somewhere about between 820 and 810. And the argument was that it could only occur, the campaign to Philistia, after the end of Shalmaneser III's reign, in the reign of Shamshi-Adad V, since the Assyrians were much weaker then. Another suggestion that has been recently put forward by Rainey has been to place it in the very beginning of the 8th century, and right before Adad-Nirari III's campaign to Damascus in 796. Now, I would like to argue that perhaps we're looking too late, and I think perhaps we should place it over here. And why do I argue this? For several reasons. First of all, the carbon-14 dating that we have, and now we have several good dates from this stratum, indicate that we're not dealing with the end of the 9th or the early 8th, but we're well in the middle or towards the middle of the 9th century. And clearly, it couldn't be when the Assyrians were still active in the Damascus area, so there's no reason to not to say that it couldn't be after, just a little time after the the last campaign of Shalmaneser III to Damascus. An additional point, which I think nobody has noticed, and I think is perhaps an important point, is perhaps it was also carried out right after the rise of Joash. And it could very well be that Joash, as a child king, was seen as a possible weak link in the chain, and perhaps Hazael thought this was an opportunity to campaign to Judah. Now, to reiterate the main points. Gat of the Philistines was destroyed by Hazael in the second half of the 9th century as part of a campaign to the southern coastal plain in Judah. Other sites, such as Tel Zayit and others, were also destroyed at this time. The campaign may be an attempt by Hazael to control the route to Egypt and routes from Arabia to the Mediterranean, just as his campaigns to other parts of the southern Levite were aimed at controlling strategic points and routes, such as campaigns in Transjordan. The unique siege system, earliest known in the world, can be paralleled with a description of the Aramean siege in Zakur inscription. This event was a major geopolitical event, a political watershed for the land of Israel at the time, perhaps inter alia, enabling the expansion of the Judahite kingdom in the late 9th century. Following the destruction, Gat of the Philistine loses its role as a dominant polity in Philistia, and when settled again briefly in the late 8th century is under Judean control. As opposed to previous suggested dates for this campaign, an early date, around 835 and later, right after the last campaigns of Shalmaneser III to Damascus, is suggested, perhaps in an attempt to utilize the perceived weakness of Judah due to the reign of a child in Jerusalem. This early date is supported by the carbon-14 dates. Now, as I said, perhaps this major event is even mentioned in the Dan Stela. I'm finishing. And all that's left is to hope, inshallah, that we'll find the inscription from Tel Esafi. And finally, you're all invited to join us, and we have a major project looking for people to join in various aspects in our excavation. And thank you very much.
From the northern Shfela, we'll now move up to the Galilee. And our next speaker is Professor Amichai Mazar from the Institute of Archaeology here at the Hebrew University. His research interests include the Bronze Age and Iron Age and the relationship between archaeology and biblical history. His current projects are at Tel Bet Sha'an, the publication project, and at Tel Rehov, excavation and publication. 17 years of archaeological investigations at Tel Bet Sha'an and Tel Rehov, the two major sites in the Bet Sha'an Valley, revealed important new evidence on many aspects of local Israelite material culture, as well as the impact of Aramean and Assyrian conquest during the period of the late 9th and the 8th centuries. And Professor Mazar's lectures this afternoon will survey some of these discoveries and explore their historical significance.
Professor Kogan, ladies and gentlemen, in light of the current, can you hear me? In light of the current uncertainties and debates concerning the history of Israel in biblical times, archaeology became an essential source for new data which is directly related